Most people walk into a new year doing the same thing they've always done. They sit quietly and tell themselves, this year will be different. They wish for more money. They wish for discipline. They wish they could finally stay consistent. They wish they could become confident instead of pretending to be strong. And then weeks pass. Life stays the same, not because they're lazy, not because they don't want it badly enough, but because wishing has never changed a human life. Wishing feels safe. It feels comfortable. It allows you to believe change is coming without demanding anything from you. But growth doesn't respond to comfort. Growth responds to standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. Your life will not rise in 2026 because you hope harder or watch more videos. It will rise only when you decide that certain behaviors, habits, and excuses are no longer acceptable in your life. Not next month. Not when motivation shows up. Not when circumstances improve. Now. And this video is not about dramatic overnight transformation. It's not about waking up at 4 a.m. or becoming a completely different person tomorrow. It's about something far more powerful and far more realistic. It's about what happens when you improve yourself just 1% every single day. Because 1% doesn't demand perfection. It demands consistency, and consistency quietly changes your identity. If you stay with this message until the end, you'll understand why small daily decisions reshape confidence, discipline, emotional control, and your entire future without burnout or overwhelm. Because the moment you raise your standards, even slightly, everything else in your life is forced to rise with you. Raise your standards, not your wishes. Most people spend their lives wishing for more money, more confidence, more discipline, more respect, more freedom. Wishing sounds harmless, but wishing is passive. Wishing keeps you emotionally comfortable while nothing changes. Standards are different. Standards are non-negotiable. A standard is the line you draw that says, this is who I am now, and this is what I tolerate no longer. The moment your standards rise, your behavior must follow, not because you feel inspired, but because anything below that line now feels unacceptable. Look at every breakthrough moment in your life. It didn't happen because you learned something new. It happened because you decided something new. You decided you were done settling. You decided you were done explaining your potential instead of living it. That decision instantly changed what actions you were willing to take and what excuses you were no longer willing to accept. Most people confuse standards with goals. A goal is something you hope to reach. A standard is something you live by. You can miss a goal and still feel okay. You cannot violate a true standard without emotional pain. That pain is not weakness. That pain is power. It's the internal alarm that forces you to correct course. When someone says they want to be fit but continues eating poorly and avoiding movement, the problem is not knowledge. The problem is standards. Their standard for health is lower than their standard for comfort. When someone says they want financial freedom but tolerates disorganization, distraction, and emotional spending, their standard for security is lower than their standard for ease. Life always aligns with the highest standard you enforce, not the loudest desire you express. Raising your standards does not mean becoming harsh with yourself. It means becoming honest. Honest about what you allow. Honest about what you repeat. Honest about what you tolerate in your thoughts, your environment, and your habits. Every behavior you repeat is a vote for the standard you are living at. If you don't like the result, don't curse the outcome. Upgrade the standard. The world does not rise to your hopes. It responds to your identity. And identity is shaped by standards practiced daily. The moment you decide that being late is no longer acceptable, you find a way to be on time. The moment you decide that quitting on yourself is no longer an option, endurance appears. The moment you decide that chaos is no longer your norm, order begins to form, not magically, automatically. People with high standards don't rely on willpower, they rely on structure. They design their lives so the right behavior becomes the default. They don't argue with themselves every day. They already decided. That decision becomes a filter. Anything that doesn't align gets removed. If you want 2026 to be different, stop asking for a better year and start demanding a better you. Demand it through standards. Standards for how you speak to yourself. Standards for how you manage your time. Standards for what you consume mentally and emotionally. Standards for how you show up when nobody is watching. Life improves when your standards become stronger than your moods. Wishes make you emotional. Standards make you unstoppable. Small daily actions compound into massive identity shifts. People overestimate what they can change in a week and underestimate what they can become in a year. They chase intensity instead of consistency. They look for dramatic transformation and overlook the quiet power of daily improvement. 1% sounds insignificant until you understand what it does to your identity over time. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You sink or rise to the level of your systems. And systems are built through small actions repeated until they become automatic. Every small action is not just an action. It is a signal to your brain about who you are becoming. When you read one page, you are not just learning information. You are becoming someone who reads. When you train for 10 minutes, you are not just exercising. You are becoming someone who trains. Identity is shaped by repetition, not intention. Most people wait for motivation to act. High performers act and let motivation chase them. Small actions remove resistance. They lower the emotional barrier to starting. Once you start, momentum takes over. The hardest part of any habit is not doing it. It's deciding to begin. Small actions make beginning inevitable. Consistency rewires your self-image. When you keep small promises to yourself, your brain updates its identity file. It stops asking, "Can I trust myself?" and starts stating, "This is who I am." That shift changes how you make decisions under pressure. You don't have to force discipline when discipline becomes part of your self-concept. The compounding effect is not just mathematical, it is psychological. Each small win builds confidence. Each day of follow-through reduces internal friction. Over time, what once required effort becomes natural. What once felt hard becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes expected. People think transformation comes from big moments, but big moments are the result of small habits stacked over time. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is a memory of past follow-through. Discipline is not genetic. It is trained through daily repetition. Focus is not something you find. It is something you practice in small increments until your attention obeys you. The danger is not small actions. The danger is small neglect. Skipping one day seems harmless. Repeating that skip becomes identity erosion. Just as positive actions compound, so do excuses. The difference between a powerful year and a disappointing one is rarely talent. It is the accumulation of daily choices that seemed insignificant at the time. When you commit to improving 1% daily, you remove overwhelm. You stop demanding perfection and start demanding progress. Progress creates hope. Hope fuels effort. Effort builds momentum. Momentum reshapes identity. Identity determines destiny. You don't wake up one day as a different person. You wake up one day realizing you've been becoming that person all along. Your language programs your nervous system. Every word you speak sends instructions to your nervous system. Not just the words you say out loud, but the ones you repeat silently when no one is listening. Your body does not understand sarcasm, exaggeration, or intention. It responds to language as command. When you say you are tired, your physiology obeys. When you say something is too hard, your muscles soften, your breath shortens, your focus collapses. Language is not decoration, it is direction. Most people talk themselves out of power before the challenge even begins. They label the day as stressful, the task as overwhelming, the situation as unfair. In doing so, they prime their nervous system for survival instead of performance. Stress chemicals flood the body. Vision narrows. Creativity shuts down. This is not because the situation is dangerous, but because the language made it feel dangerous. High-level performers are obsessive about words because they understand this connection. They don't deny reality, but they frame it in a way that keeps their nervous system resourceful. They don't say they are anxious. They say they are energized. They don't say they are overwhelmed. They say they are focused on priorities. That shift is not motivational fluff. It changes breathing patterns, muscle tension, and mental clarity in real time. Your inner dialogue is the most repeated instruction set your brain receives. If you speak to yourself with doubt, urgency, and criticism, your nervous system stays in fight or flight mode. In that state, learning slows, patience disappears, and discipline becomes exhausting. If you speak to yourself with certainty, direction, and command, your nervous system stabilizes. Calm strength replaces chaos. You don't need to feel confident to speak confidently. Speaking confidently creates confidence. This is why people can read the same book, hear the same advice, and get different results. One person says, "This might work if I can stay consistent." Another says, "This is what I do now." The nervous system responds differently to each statement. One keeps options open. The other closes the door on excuses. Words also determine recovery. When something goes wrong, the story you tell decides how fast you bounce back. If you say, "I always mess things up," your nervous system stores failure as identity. If you say, "This is feedback," your system stays open, flexible, and adaptive. Same event, different language, completely different outcome. You don't rise or fall based on circumstances. You rise or fall based on the meaning you attach through language. Meaning creates emotion. Emotion drives behavior. Behavior creates results. Change the words and you interrupt the entire chain. Your environment constantly influences your language, but mastery begins when you take control of it. Complaining is not harmless. It rehearses weakness. Self-criticism is not humility. It is sabotage disguised as honesty. Every time you speak, you are either conditioning strength or rehearsing limitation. Powerful language is not loud, it is precise, it is deliberate, it is chosen. When you clean up your words, your nervous system stops wasting energy on emotional noise and starts channeling it into execution. Your posture changes, your breathing deepens, your mind becomes quieter and sharper at the same time. You are always listening to yourself. Make sure what you hear builds you instead of breaks you. Win the morning or spend the day recovering. The way you start your day determines the way you experience your life. Morning is not just a time of day, it is a state-setting ritual. When you wake up and immediately react to noise, messages, and demands, your nervous system enters response mode. You begin the day behind. From that moment on, you are chasing focus instead of directing it. Most people don't realize they are exhausted not from work, but from constant emotional recovery. They wake up rushed, distracted, and reactive, and spend the rest of the day trying to regain clarity they never established. The morning decides whether you lead your day or your day leads you. Your brain is most suggestible in the first hour after waking. Whatever you feed it becomes the baseline for the next 12 hours. If the first input is chaos, comparison, or urgency, that becomes your emotional home base. If the first input is movement, control, and intention, your system locks into strength. Winning the morning does not require perfection. It requires ownership. Ownership of your body before the world touches it. Ownership of your focus before external agendas invade it. When you move your body early, you signal strength to your nervous system. Blood flow increases. Stress hormones balance. Energy rises naturally without stimulation. Breath is the fastest way to shift state. Shallow breathing tells your brain you are under threat. Deep, controlled breathing tells your brain you are safe and capable. When you control your breath in the morning, you take control of your emotional tone. You don't wait to see how the day feels. You decide how you feel. The mind follows the body. This is why morning rituals work even when motivation is low. You don't think your way into energy. You move your way into clarity. Action comes first. Emotion follows. Distraction in the morning is expensive. Every notification fragments attention. Every comparison drains confidence. You may not notice it immediately, but it accumulates. By midday, decision fatigue sets in. Focus weakens. Willpower feels heavy. The problem did not start at noon. It started at waking. People who win consistently do not rely on willpower later in the day. They build momentum early. Momentum reduces resistance. When you've already done something difficult in the morning, the rest of the day feels manageable. You carry the identity of someone who shows up. Morning is where you remind your nervous system who is in control, not your schedule, not your inbox, not other people's priorities. You. That control creates calm. Calm creates power. Power creates follow-through. If you don't design your morning, you inherit someone else's agenda and spend the day trying to recover your focus, your confidence, and your energy. Discipline beats motivation every time. Motivation is emotional, unpredictable, and dependent on mood. Discipline is structural. It does not ask how you feel. It asks what is required. When people rely on motivation, they live at the mercy of energy spikes and crashes. When they rely on discipline, progress becomes inevitable. Discipline is not force. It is prior decision. You remove choice, so action becomes automatic. You don't negotiate with yourself every day because the standard is already set. Discipline is freedom disguised as constraint. It saves energy, removes hesitation, and builds trust with yourself. Every disciplined action reinforces identity. You stop trying to become someone better and start acting as someone reliable. Motivation follows discipline, never the other way around. Do one uncomfortable thing daily. Proof builds confidence. Confidence is not built by thinking positive thoughts. It is built by evidence. Evidence comes from action taken despite discomfort. One uncomfortable action per day rewires your self-image. It proves to your nervous system that avoidance is no longer in control. Discomfort loses its threat when you face it regularly. What you once feared becomes familiar. Familiar becomes manageable. Manageable becomes strength. Avoidance shrinks your world. Discomfort expands it. Each small act of courage compounds into certainty. You don't need to do everything. You need to do something hard consistently. That proof stacks quietly until doubt has no argument left. Emotional control is the real power skill. Most people are not defeated by circumstances, but by unmanaged emotional reactions. When emotions spike, logic disappears and habits collapse. Emotional control is not suppression. It is direction. You feel the emotion without letting it drive the decision. The moment you can pause instead of react, you regain authority over your behavior. That pause is power. It allows you to choose long-term gain over short-term relief. Triggers lose control when you stop identifying with them. You become the observer instead of the prisoner. Mastering emotions stabilizes performance under pressure. Calm becomes a weapon. Clarity replaces chaos. When you control your emotional state, you control your actions. And when you control your actions, outcomes follow consistently. Consistency creates certainty. Certainty creates momentum. Consistency removes doubt. When you show up daily, the mind stops questioning your capability. Certainty is born from repetition, not results. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates confidence. Once certainty forms, momentum follows naturally. You no longer push yourself forward. You feel pulled by progress. Momentum reduces effort because identity takes over. You act in alignment with who you believe you are. Inconsistency creates hesitation. Consistency creates flow. Flow multiplies output. What once required discipline becomes instinctive. Certainty transforms effort into movement, and movement reshapes your trajectory. Progress, not perfection, rewires your brain. Perfectionism paralyzes because it ties action to outcome. Progress liberates because it ties action to movement. The brain learns through reinforcement, not flawlessness. Every small step forward releases proof that effort works. That proof builds motivation internally instead of borrowing it emotionally. When you focus on progress, failure becomes feedback instead of identity. The nervous system stays open, flexible, and willing to try again. Perfection demands certainty before action. Progress creates certainty through action. Consistent progress trains the brain to associate effort with reward. Momentum replaces fear. You stop waiting to feel ready and start trusting the process you are building daily. Who you become daily determines your 2026 outcome. Your future is shaped quietly by daily choices that seem insignificant in the moment. Identity is not declared, it is practiced. Every decision casts a vote for the person you are becoming. Habits are not tasks, they are identity statements repeated until believed. The body and mind align with what you practice most often. You don't rise suddenly in 2026. You arrive there as the result of accumulated behavior. Daily discipline sculpts character. Character directs decisions. Decisions compound into outcomes. Time does not create change. Identity-driven action does. Everything you've heard in this message comes down to one simple reality. Your life is not waiting for a big moment. It's being shaped quietly by what you do every day. You don't become confident all at once. You become confident by keeping small promises when it would be easier to quit. You don't build discipline by feeling motivated. You build it by showing up even when motivation is gone. Every keynote in this message points to the same truth. Standards decide behavior. Behavior repeated becomes identity. Identity determines where you end up. 1% improvement isn't about doing more. It's about becoming different in subtle ways. Different in how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. Different in how you handle discomfort instead of avoiding it. Different in how consistently you show up without recognition. Progress rewires your brain. Consistency creates certainty. Certainty creates momentum. And momentum changes something critical. It makes quitting feel harder than continuing. You won't wake up one day in 2026 and suddenly have a better life. You'll look back and realize it was built quietly through daily decisions that didn't feel important at the time. Time doesn't transform people. Identity-driven action does. If this message resonated with you, don't just listen, commit. Subscribe to Tony Robbins' track for daily mindset, discipline, and identity level growth. Comment below. I raise my standards in 2026 because the future doesn't belong to the motivated, it belongs to the consistent.